Welcome to the Ascension Star Gate Podcast series, where we discuss the aspects of human consciousness, spirituality, metaphysics and philosophy, energy, extraterrestrial life, science, biology, and the alchemy of higher states of beingness, all from a heart-centered perspective. I am your host and guide, Glenn Mate, and let's begin our journey.
Get ready for a powerful conversation with Sébastien Martin. He is a visionary entrepreneur and multi-dimensional experiencer whose life was forever changed after a direct encounter with a fifth dimensional stellar being. Since that moment in 2011, Sébastien has become a conduit for profound galactic wisdom, channeling higher dimensional messages, remote viewing with governmental agencies, and now creating a global hub for spiritual awakening through the Terra Novelis Center on Vancouver Island in Canada. Welcome to the Ascension Star Gate Podcast, Sébastien, and thank you for being a guest today.
Well, thank you very much, Glenn, for having me on your show.
I gave a short introduction, but there's just so much more to you, Sébastien. Would you like to share some of the more intricacies of your life and how you started to get into remote viewing and what was that experience like?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it all started when I was in my younger age, when I had visions. It started off when I was about 16 years old, when even earlier than that, when I was a child, like yourself, like at 8 years old, I also had some visions, deja vus, out-of-body experiences. I was not really shocked by my experiences. It was almost like second nature, but I was not talking to my family really about it. I did maybe address it once or twice, and they kind of brushed me off, for thinking it was just like my imagination kind of thing. So I was not really focusing on that, but I do remember it very well, obviously, because when that happens to you, it's a life-changing experience, right? But only yourself can understand that kind of behavior and then those events. So when I turned 16 years old, though, when I was in a private school, in a boarding school, and my life was really different then. I still had those out-of-body experiences all the time. Around that time, and even the 2 years prior to when I was 16, so around 14 to 16, I was having a lot of vivid dreams, out-of-body experiences, seeing um, my silver cord attached from my body to my spirit body very clearly. I have those very clear memories of all of this. It was like it happened to me yesterday. It's that vivid. And around that time, I used to have a lot of nosebleeds as well. So it's almost like there was something else happening to me that I was not aware of consciously. And after the facts, I just realized that, of course, I was being abducted and I was being experimented on, but I had no clue at the time. All I could see and all I remembered was that I had very clear visions of various events. I was also indirectly suffering from bilocation. So my schoolmates were seeing me on the school grounds on a Wednesday afternoon, which was study time or whatever, and I was at the local library in town, so not at the same place. And I'm still friends with those people. They, for years I've been telling them, "Oh, you're just like doing a prank on me, right? It wasn't real. Like, I wasn't there, right?" And they said, "No, no, no. I clearly saw you. You had your sports bag, like you were walking out of the school. You waved back at me. All of these things were happening to me." And outside of the school environment, my own family used to tell me the same thing too. That my grandmother used to see me on television, for example. I say, "Yeah, I saw you in the Pyrenees Mountains in France." Like, as I was nowhere near there. Like, there's no way. So a lot of these things were happening to me around that time, and I still remember those experiences and those moments, but I had no recollection of what was truly happening to me then. So it's only when I became an adult and I still had those very clear visions when I was about 34, 30, 33, 34 years old. And my wife at the time just got pregnant, and for 10 years before that, I decided to stop all of my visions. So I created a Faraday cage around myself to stop having those visions affecting my life, so I could focus on the real world. That was my idea. Try to make money, trying to just like be a good businessman and just like stick to a family man, and that's all I cared about. And so my whole world basically got shattered when my wife became pregnant, and all my visions came back in full force. And so that was very disturbing to me. And for a full year, I had those visions every day, every night. I was waking up in the middle of the night, and I was like writing those events. There was one particular event that completely changed my life. I wouldn't say for the better, I guess it is, but it was a starting point of my remote viewing experiences, which at the time I had no clue about. I didn't know what remote viewing was. But what I was experiencing as visions kind of branched out to something I could control. So it started off with those, visions of real events, of real people, and those showed up in forms of dreams. So I was only seeing those people through the eyes of someone else, and that's pretty much how I would say I'm different from most remote viewers, because not only I can see events through the eyes of someone else in a room or on the spot, I can also see things through my own personal life, like through my own spirit form. So I through my third eye, let's say. So when I started seeing Rafik Hariri, who was the ex prime minister of Lebanon back in 2009 and to 2010, that's when I was having those visions, those very vivid visions, paired with earthquakes and tsunamis and like catastrophic events that were presented to me almost as real. Like, this is what's going to happen. So you can imagine the state of mind I was in. I was really shocked. I had a lot of anxiety around all of these events because it felt so real to me, and it made me feel very emotional. And I guess at the time I was also about to become a father. So all of these, you know how the feeling is, right? So it was a life-changing experience. But while this experience stayed with me, and I was seeing the assassination of Rafik Hariri, um, for me, it was just a random event that I had no idea why I was seeing it. I guess it was based around the same premise of working and joining forces with the CIA or other agencies to do remote viewing, because that particular event, which I had no idea about at the time, was not known to the press. So what I was seeing through the eyes of someone else, through a rooftop, I was seeing Rafik Hariri opening up his window in his car before the car blew up, with a bomb that was like from a van next to him, and that's how he died. So, but I was seeing it through a scope. So I was viewing it through the scope from someone else on the rooftop, and the direction, everything that I was seeing was already known, but not to the media, right? So that's when I started doing my interviews in 2016, I believe. All this time from 2009 to 2016, a lot of various events occurred, which includes my interactions with this fifth dimensional being, Zor, who was from the Pleiades. And he showed up in my living room after showing up in a dream. Same thing. So I woke up in the morning. That was in 2011, so November of 2011. And I clearly remember that being smiling at me with a big bright smile, like a Colgate smile, like, so clear, and huge eyes, way bigger than human eyes, with high cheekbones and a very unnatural look, but very polished look, almost like a surfer dude from California with like wavy hair. But he had like a blue suit on. I could not really see any signals or no nothing on his body, because it was just a torso. And but all I could feel from him was that he was very happy to see me and that he recognized me, but I did not recognize him.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, shocked at that kind of, look. So during that day, I was going to the office by myself. It was a bank holiday, so the 11th of November, 2011, so 11/11/11. I was by myself in the office catching up with some paperwork, and my window, so I had a window behind my laptop, and I could see through the window, like on in my field of vision, I could still see Zor, almost like peering through my other dimensions, like he was there, observing me still, like almost I was seeing him from the same morning. And so, and it stayed with me for the whole day. And I was wondering, why am I not checking that dream off? It doesn't make any sense. I never had that before. And so when I came home, I felt compelled to meditate, because I was doing transcendental meditation since I was 8 years old. So my mom taught me that from a very early age. She was a Buddhist, so she basically taught me all of that. And so I decided to, after dinner, my wife went to bed with our daughter then. And so I decided to stay behind, sat on the sofa, poured myself a chamomile tea on the countertop in the kitchen. So I was letting it to steep so I could just catch it later. So it was super hot. So in the meantime, I thought I would just like sit down on the sofa and meditate. And so I did that, and I was closing my eyes. And then literally the second I closed my eyes, I could feel this whirlwind of energy floating around me, like going in a circle. And I thought that was very strange because I never felt that before. Like especially when you start meditating, you have your mantra, and you start getting into that mood, and it takes a while, trying to even shake off the monkey brain and all of this. This was instant. As soon as the second I closed my eyes, this energy occurred, and it almost felt like it couldn't wait for me to start meditating and communicating with that being. It just couldn't wait. So it was exciting at the same time because I was curious. I'm always very curious. And so when I was observing that motion, I was, wondering, what is this all about? I could feel this energy change, not just in my consciousness, but also in my body. I could feel it in a room. It was really encompassing. Everything in my surrounding was being affected by this energy. And so as I was again still meditating, closing my eyes, and then I felt the energy stop all of a sudden. Everything stopped. So that's what like shocked me, and I opened my eyes because it's almost like wondering what's going on. And as soon as I opened my eyes, that being was standing up right in front of me, in front of the library shelf, next to the TV, and he was standing up there. And my first reaction, to be honest with you, was trying to stand up and almost like shocked and trying to, strangers in my home. I wasn't really thinking rationally. I was just trying to defend my home. That was my first instinct.
Right.
And then that's when I realized that I could not move. So I was completely frozen. My hands were actually beside myself. I was on the sofa. My hands were like resting on the side, and I remember it so clearly that I opened my eyes and then I had this shock, feeling it in my body. But then the second I felt I couldn't move, I panicked. I panicked internally, and at that point that being introduced himself to me, saying, "Don't worry, this is normal. Don't panic." He was kind of warning me, but trying to relax me at the same time, which was not working. By the way, I could hear his words telepathically because he was talking to me telepathically, but I was still feeling panic a bit on the inside because I couldn't move, and I never had that experience before, where I was frozen, and that kind of shocked me. And so, as he was talking to me telepathically, still with the same bright smile, same attitude as in my dream in the morning, I was literally frozen in fear, but I was not feeling like he was going to be attacking me or anything else. He was very calm. He stayed in the same position. He was not trying to move towards me, nothing. Just communicating with me and trying to share his presence for saying, "I'm Zor. I'm from the Galactic Alliance." These, again, were unknown to me. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what the Galactic Alliance or even the Galactic Federation that most people talked about. I was not in that realm. I had nothing to do with the ETs, UFOs. I was not, studying that. This was not part of my life. So for me, whatever he shared with me at that time was completely unknown, and I had no clue about what he was sharing with me at the time. All I could relate to was that a week prior to that event, I booked an appointment with a clinical hypnotherapist to deal with my anxiety and the visions I was having. So this was completely unrelated, and I thought, well, maybe he can address those concerns, with me, because I was sharing with him. I remember it so clearly. I said, I have all of these visions and that are plaguing my life, and I was wondering if those events will occur. I felt like he knew the answers, and like I said, I was in a very total different mindset, and most of the conversation was completely blurred out to the extent that I only remembered a certain amount. So and I will tell you that after the facts. But when I was basically talking to that being, I remembered certain fragments of our conversation, but not all of it. So when I shared the points about the visions and the catastrophic events, he was like so casual about the whole thing, for saying, "Oh yeah, people die, but it's no big deal," kind of thing. We reincarnate and we just have other kind of life experiences. He didn't care about the pain and the sorrow, suffering. For him, it was part of the human emotions and the human experience, and they were almost like gathering all of this information on a database, almost like computerized system. There was no emotions coming from him. I could not feel a single emotions coming from him. That's the thing. He was giving me like those words of reassurance, but I could not feel anything from him. That was the main thing, and it took me years to realize that the forced smile that he had, which was not natural, was almost a way to mimic the human smile, the way we do
Yes.
things when we try to greet each other, or the way you are now. It's exactly that. That's exactly what he's trying to duplicate, but without knowing how, because he couldn't feel or have that connection to this. And all I remember was, again, down the line, after my hypnotherapy sessions, what really shocked me was my star father. So basically, Zoe was my baby brother, a few thousand years old, but still my baby brother. And I was there to almost like have an awakening. He was there against protocol. I only discovered that after the facts. But at that point, that's exactly why he showed up. He basically was fighting against protocol to meet with me and trying to awaken me and trying to make me remember. And it did work because everything changed after that event. So I started having the Kundalini awakening right after that, when the swirl that I was seeing around my body and in the room was intricately linked to my Kundalini energy and the way I could feel and sense energy all around me and beyond. But this was just like the starting point. Obviously, that was like unlocking certain gifts that I was already experiencing through my visions, but it was so uncontrolled and so random that I could not control any of it. It was just happening to me, but I was not doing it for other people or voluntarily agreeing with this. I was just the victim of all of this, which is why I had so much anxiety. And so he was trying to make me embrace this new reality through not just the visions I was having, for saying this is just normal, and you just have to embrace whatever comes to you because this is part of the human emotions, and whatever events may occur, you don't necessarily have to have fears associated with it, which is what the hypnotherapist shared with me as well. So when he vanished, which is kind of strange because I remember him so well, like vanishing in a haze. So his physical body was not there physically. He was more of an hologram in front of me, but he appeared to be physical at the time. He had a blue glow of energy surrounding him, like around him, during that event. And when he phased out and disappeared, and the room went back to normal, and the energy changed altogether, I could feel the energy go back to normal right
Mhm.
after. And so when that happened, I walked back to the kitchen, looking down the floor at my feet. I remember that so well, like going back, just wondering, am I losing my mind? That's the first thing that came to me. Like, am I really losing it?
Hmm.
Because this
Exactly.
was not normal to me. And so I went back to the kitchen, grabbed my cup of tea, put it to my lips, and that's when I realized that's freezing cold. And then I looked at the clock on the stove, and that's when I realized I had over 2 hours of missing time.
Mm.
So that was strange to me. And while I had glimpses of conversations, obviously I missed a lot of things, and it could have been an abduction again. I have no idea. And to be honest with you, to this day, I have not been going back under hypnosis to find out what happened to me during those 2 hours. So I'm actually looking forward to do that because now that I'm older and stuff, I may understand more from
Right.
that experience. But what happened after that, I went to see the hypnotherapist and I had those sessions for many months. And so I talked about my visions. I was not really comfortable sharing my ET experience with that therapist because she was a clinical hypnotherapist. She was dealing with like people stop smoking cigarettes. She was helping women with like pregnancies and for the pain. Nothing to do with ETs. That was not her thing. So even like going to the vision aspect was already a
Mhm.
leap of faith, for her.
Right.
And so she was comfortable with like past lives, and she was comfortable with all of this, trying to make me remember past events, and also obviously dealing with my subconscious mind. So when we talked about the visions, and for what I've experienced when I was 16 years old, she asked me to go back to that time. And so when I did, that's when I realized that my first total experience of being hypnotized to remember when I was 16 years old was being back on the school grounds of my private school and looking down at my feet and being lifting up, like I was lifting up the ground and my feet were
Mm.
leaving. And the way I was describing things while I was looking at this through my own eyes as a first person, I was describing it like, oh, my feet are leaving the ground. I was just describing as it was without feeling a thing. I was just like observing the situation without feeling connected to myself as a human being. Like I was not feeling the emotions associated with it because I do believe that when this happened to me, I was already being subdued and I was already under control. So my emotions were completely stale. And so when I was going up in space, I was again describing, oh, I'm being put back on my back. I'm just on my back in space, like, in the sky. And looking forward towards my feet, I can see a craft. I can see a craft
Mhm.
and the side door opening up with in a bright light. So I was, heading into the craft feet first. And as I was describing that, knowing that the therapist was not open to this, and I had no clue. This was my first experience, and I wasn't even thinking about her. I was only describing what I was seeing.
Right.
That was so selfish of me, And I was like going feet first, and I remember being in that room. It was a very bright room, and there were like tall gray aliens like on my side, and I know that there were some behind me and some on my left hand side as well. But I think they were just putting some device on my head at that point. And all of a sudden they stopped. And I could feel that because they were looking at each other and they were arguing. They were doing like this blow, 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 like, kind of like language that I could not
Yes.
understand. And that's what I was describing to the therapist. I said, they're talking a different language. I can't understand what they're saying. And so she said, well, you are in your subconscious mind. You can go back to that time, obviously, and you can ask them what they are arguing about, right? So I asked them that. I said, what are you arguing about? And they said, well, we can't touch you because you've been tampered with. So I didn't know what that meant. And so I was basically in that mode. And when that happened, this is when the first time around, I don't think I really covered that on other interviews, but the therapist stopped the session. She, that was the first time. So in the first session ever, that's when she stopped the conversation and said, let's go back to your body, because she didn't know how to handle this. She didn't know how to address those issues with ETs and UFOs and abductions. So she basically had to research it for another week before bringing me back on and doing the same thing again. So, after that, I was kind of in a state of not panic, but was wondering, is that true? Like I was questioning myself a lot, thinking this is not real. It's just my imagination. And she was trying to convince me that, no, what you are seeing is your memory, because the state you are in and the subconscious, in your subconscious, you can see events that happened to you that you forgot or were erased from your memory. And she was showing me the data from stuff that she studied, obviously. And I was not convinced. I was really not convinced. And so for me, it was still my imagination. And so when I went back, we went through the same experience again, and we repeated exactly the same experience. I had exactly the same feeling, I guess, when I was lifted up and going back into that craft. And then when I was asking those beings what they were arguing about, and they didn't say anything to me. They did not respond, apart from you've been tampered with. When I asked them what that meant, I was met with silence. And so when I was repeating this to the therapist, she said, oh, well, can they then show you what they mean by that? And this is what my belief or my understanding of hypnotherapy completely drastically changed.
Right.
Because while they put me under, the connection, like the fast connection to what they were showing me as symbols in midair, those symbols again meant nothing for me, but I was able to draw them on a piece of paper. So in between sessions, like during the session, I was able to go back and draw those symbols and go back into an hypnotic state right away, because I was so under that basically I was a very good subject. And those symbols meant nothing to me. So when I asked what those symbols meant, once again, those symbols meant nothing to them either, because I was met with silence. So the therapist then says something that, again, completely changed my views. And that's what she said was, can they then show you where you've seen those symbols before, if they meant anything to you? And that's basically when I blacked out under hypnosis, and I felt like I was going backwards, the sensation of going backwards. And then I opened my eyes again under hypnosis, and I could see baby hands and baby feet, and I was in a cylindrical like coffin, almost like a cylinder, and I could see those symbols on the side, on the seams, and there was a dome over me, and the dome was made of glass or something, but it was opaque. It was not clear, and I could see silhouettes walking around the cylinder, but I was in an enclosed space covered in what people would call black goo. I was in a black liquid that was thick, and it was not covering my head. I was basically like my head was in it, but I could feel the whole thing, and it didn't feel sticky or it didn't feel wet or cold. I was warm. I was normal, but I was scared, and I felt like I was a baby. That's basically what I was, and I knew it was me, and I was looking at it again as a first person. that completely changed my views about hypnotherapy and how it could relate to those past memories or events, because I knew it was me and I was panicking. And so the therapist then said, well, can you just come out of your body to find out where you are? That's what she said to me. And so the next thing was I basically came out of my body. So I left my baby body to be, in space. I was literally in space and I was looking down at the craft I was in. And right underneath the craft was the Earth in full glow. Like the space was completely black. I could see the craft that looked like a Lego puzzle set, whatever it was. It was basically just cubical, very uneven shapes. It was not round or cylindrical. It was a massive mothership that was a few kilometers long. It was that big. But I knew exactly where I was inside that spacecraft. So I had a direct connection to that. And so the therapist, and I could hear that in her voice, and that's also in the recording when she said, oh no, just go back in your body, go back in your body right now. I just want you to come out of your body, but stay in the room. So you could see your surroundings and you could see the people in the room, which is what I did. And so when I observed those beings, they were like people like Zoe, same appearance. The man was bearded, but he had the same eyes, same big eyes, and same high cheekbones, and he was very tall. He was taller than Zoe. Zoe was only like 6 foot tall. He was almost the same height as me, like 6'2", whatever, 6'1". And that being that I saw almost looked like Zeus. He had almost like a crown on his head with a symbol on the front, but I didn't recognize the symbol. And he had this upside down triangle on his chest, same as your logo, but it was an upside down triangle on his left chest. And the woman next to him had exactly the same logo, which was the upside down triangle that those tall gray aliens showed me as holographic symbols when I was abducted at 16. And so that was the connection. And so what I found out down the line is what that upside down triangle was, which is the symbol of the winter triangle in our constellation, which includes the Pleiades. And so, and Orion and so on. So basically, those beings were there. I could not really interact with them. I was not having a discussion with them. I could only observe what was there. And I had a direct connection to them. It was a weird feeling because this was my first encounter with those beings. They were both the man and the woman were both very stern looking. I couldn't feel any emotions from them, and I think that triggered me. As a baby having that experience, I felt scared, and so I started to panic inside that coffin. It was a coffin. It was a cylinder, and I panicked and I started like crying as an adult under hypnosis. That was a weird experience, a weird feeling where I wanted my mommy. I was like craving for my mommy. I was like scared, and especially because the black goo started to move very almost like intelligently around my body,
as if it had its own consciousness.
Yeah, and so the thing is, though, what nobody really knows in your podcast is that when I was 6 months old, that's when basically, and I was about 6 months old in that experience. That's when my skin grew back. So when I was born without the first layer of the epidermis that most people have. So I was raw, red, and in pain because my skin was not present. And so doctors in France, where I grew up, had no clue what this was. They gave it a name like Lenner-Mussus, which was not the disease I had, because obviously this genetic condition was associated with people growing up to be super skinny and like 5 feet tall, and that's not the case. I'm 6'2", and I'm not really skinny, so obviously it was not that. But I believe that that experience, even if that was the case, even if that's what I had, that experience healed me completely. And my skin grew back when I was 6 months old. It just came back naturally, and nobody could explain it. So that was a weird thing. But when I came back into my body as an adult after that hypnotherapy session, it completely changed my life because that's when I realized that I had this not my imagination. It
Right.
was definitely something that I remembered, and it stayed with me. And you know how it feels like. I don't know if you ever been to an hypnotherapist or if you went under once, but for me, the way it happened is while I had those memories and recollections, more information came after. So I had way more information that came to me. And that was the direct connection I had with my star family, basically, when they were talking to me, communicating with me, and sharing information that was new to me at the time. So again, that was in 2011 up to 2012.
Mm-hmm.
So all this that period, I was just like learning and trying to embrace what was happening to me. And what I've learned is while I was having those visions, the therapist taught me how to control my visions and how to create them on demand, basically through hypnosis, which was great because I was able to generate a lot of visions. And that led me to understand more about different timelines that we are on.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was merging timelines, I could not differentiate them from the timelines we are on today and potential timelines that were part of our day to day. But I was mixing them up basically, and which is why I was having a lot of anxiety around that because I believe that everything that I was seeing was true and was going to happen. But in fact, that was not the case. So for me, to understand that was a lifesaver, and I was able to learn more from it and knowing how to differentiate those timelines in my consciousness and almost like having a different frequency
Mm-hmm.
from each. So just the way those visions came, they now came with a different type of frequency that indicated to me that this was not the same frequency as I was on as Sébastien Martin under this life. So it was a very important learning curve to me, which lasted a full year. I have to say it wasn't happening overnight, but I was able to grasp that over time, and that led me to have more visions and also not panic over them, just being able
Mm.
to embrace whatever was coming my way. I was still dealing with my business. I had like 17 employees just in Canada. I had the same amount in the US, and also some bases in the UK and New Zealand at the time. So I was a very busy man as a multinational business owner, and this was to me something that I kind of left and pushed on the side. It was nice for me to know that this was there, but this was not part of my life. And so I was kind of pushed it aside. I left it there because what I was told by my star family was a very clear message. And that's when I pushed it aside was your role is to awaken the star seeds of his planet. That was,
Yes.
your life was about living your life, living and dying and experiencing all human emotions. But because Zo showed up and woke you up, your life mission has now changed and evolved to this because
Right.
you are able to do this. But I was not given any manuals. No one showed me how to do this. So I just said, oh, whatever. And I just like pushed it aside. But as time went by, around 2016, I decided to do like radio shows. And in 2014, I sold my business at the time because my wife was having some health issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, we are too much in debt. We can't just keep risking, what we built over 10 years, trying to just like lose it over time if, we have to change our life drastically. So I put the business for sale. We found buyers, and I remained chairman of the board for another 2 years until I resigned. And again, that decision was based around me having more visions and feeling compelled to share my experiences to the public. And so I had to be very upfront with the business owners and my partners to say, look, I'm going to be talking about aliens and UFOs and stuff like that. And I understand that it would not be the right, fit for this company, especially me as being the chairman of the board. And so the CEO asked me to resign pretty much, or accepted my resignation because this was my decision all along. And so I'd say, okay, that's fine. So I resigned. I remained a director and a shareholder, but I was no longer part of that company on a day to day. And so when I opened up to the public with my experiences, I felt that this was the right thing to do at the time, and also that basically my life was an achievement. I was able to comply with whatever those beings told me to do, which was like awaken some of the star seeds through my experiences and sharing it publicly. And I thought that I was done with it. After that, I thought, oh, I've done my bit. Now I can just like carry on with my life.
And
But
so you thought so, right?
yeah, so
And
my
so you
first,
thought
my
that was it,
yeah,
which
so
is
my
never the
first
case.
exactly. So my first interview obviously triggered a lot of people following me on Facebook, and I was not being really selective. I was just accepting anybody coming my way. I didn't really know much about social media, and so I was just accepting random people without knowing who they were. And I know I carried my life. And then one day I was again in my bed, and I had this very clear vision of this woman who was in a car, and she was on the back seat, and she was hiding, but she was still was able to peer through the back window on the streets, and she was seeing this very busy, crowded place. And there were three people walking against the crowd. So it seems like everybody was walking almost in the same
Hmm.
direction, but there were three very distinctive people that were walking against the crowd in a very stern way. They were very serious people, and I could feel her emotions as this woman that at the time when I was having that vision, I didn't know who that woman was. That came right after the dream finished. When I woke up, I knew that who was this woman, and I knew she was an agent undercover, and she was hiding because she was leaving the place. That's what I
Mm.
knew, and I recognized those people. I could describe them so well. I still see them in my vision. um, when I contacted that person on my Facebook, because she was part of my Facebook friends that I
Hmm.
never contacted before, and I reached out to her through Messenger, and I said, "Your life is in danger." That's how I started exactly. I said, "I know who you are and what you do, and you need to leave." That's what I said, and I didn't hear back from her for 3 weeks.
Hmm.
So that message just kind of stayed there in the ether, and then 2 weeks later, she sent me a message with the picture of a man. And she said, "Is that the man that you saw in your vision?" And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly him. But he was with two other guys, and he was wearing different clothes, obviously. But that's him. That's the guy." And so, once again, there was no feedback. She said just like, "Thank you." And as I think at the time I was actually heading to Washington State because I was going to be interviewing Laura Eisenhower.
Hmm.
She was actually there, so we decided to meet. And at the time, I was planning to do interviews with other people and talk about consciousness and so on. And so I went there, and while I was waiting for the ferry, that woman contacted me again, and that's what she said. Like, thank you. I'm now in Jordan, and so what you are doing is remote viewing. And I said, "What's that?" And so she was very curious. Oh, she said, "You have no idea. You're not being trained to do any of this." And I said, "No, I don't know what you are talking about." And so that's what was strange because again, she didn't really contacted me after that. It's only when I got back to Canada and then I was at home, and she just sent me another message, and she said, "Well, what you've done is very interesting." And she wasn't telling me she was part of the CIA or anything else then. She was just trying to tell me that she followed me on Facebook because what I was saying about Rafik Hariri was very interesting. And because she was from the Middle East herself originally, even if she became American afterwards when she moved to the US and studied there and so on, she was telling me, I said, well, what you're doing is remote viewing, and I would like to test you on this because it's see if you can do more and if you can see more. So she started by sending me some newspaper articles that were in English, and she said, well, read through the article and then tell me what you see. That's how she started with it.
Mm.
And so it started off with an event that happened in Jordan, and she was in Jordan at the time. So it was very timely, but I guess she was already doing it for a reason. And I said, yeah, I can see those two women in the article. It says that they are going on a rooftop and then they jumped and they both committed suicide. And they were both known people in Jordan. And one was a journalist, I believe, and the other one was a financial person working for the ministry or something. I'm not quite sure what was the case, but they were. I don't know if they were sisters or twins, but either way, I knew they were sisters. And so when I read the article, it said that they jumped and they died, and that was it. But and just because they were known, and then I just had a very clear vision of them being pushed by two guards, two soldiers. And while this was happening, I had a glimpse of one of the sisters saw through her eyes. So I was seeing those two women completely. I was kind of almost like hovering in space, like in the air, looking down, looking at them, with the two guards behind them on the top of this building in construction. So that was kind of a very clear vision of that in broad daylight while I was reading the article. And while this was happening, almost like time stopped, and I was able to link to one of those two women, which was looking at financial data, which was linked to the finance minister of Jordan. And I knew that those numbers, for some reason, I could not speak Arabic, but I was able to understand that those numbers and whatever report she was reading was incriminating that Jordan finance minister because he was corrupt. And I think that she was trying to use that information to get what she wanted, which was part of a project that she planned to do in Africa. So she was trying to get some funding. And I guess that didn't happen because she got killed. So because she was a threat to that man at the time, this is what happened. So that's what I came up with. And then I saw those two guards leaving the building. One left from the back, and the other one left for the front, from the front of the building. And the response I got from that person, from that agent, was, "Well, that's very interesting. We knew of one guard, but not two." So she was able to start validating what I was seeing, and so I thought that was very exciting to me because it was new. I was receiving validations for whatever I was seeing, and I was doing this very randomly. And in all honesty with you, I was not practicing meditation. I was not concentrating doing this. I was just letting it go. I was being freestyle, let's say.
Right.
And so
I want to give just a little bit of context about remote viewing for our viewers so they can understand. And I'm going to give it from the perspective of my limited ability for remote viewing, is that we can place our consciousness somewheres, and it could be a given target, it could be some words, it could be a picture, it could be numerical. And as you stated, when you have the ability to let go, you can position your consciousness to have an aspect of a view, of a vision. You can pick up emotions. You can pick up the information from other people, how their emotions are in relation to what you can understand. And then we can put this back into our knowledge base and contextual way of explaining it, as we're seeing this sometimes almost as a movie. And we can sometimes go back in time. We can go in and see the future, which are energetic patterns of probability. and then we can go see in the moment of now. And the
Mhm.
moment of now is always in existence of what this particular moment is, and take that piece of information. So it's something that we all innately have embedded in our DNA when we have the ability to expand and explore our consciousness. And it's about building an awareness. And sometimes we just kind of pass off these visions of like, oh, what was that? I just had something flash through my memory. And, in that moment, that might have been a part of remote viewing. So I just wanted to kind of lay a little bit of that foundation so people have a better idea of what we're really talking about.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're right, but at the same time, there are different layers in
Right.
remote viewing. So, depending on how psychic or intuitive you are, especially for those who start control remote viewing, so you have to realize that there are different forms of remote viewing,
Hmm.
and the one that I practiced was not trained. I was not
Right.
trained to become a remote viewer. So my understanding of remote viewing is very different from most people, and especially for those who've been trained with coordinates, for example. So the Stargate program, which was created by the CIA, was a program that had a certain protocol that included certain coordinates or numbers associated with a target. And those numbers were completely random numbers, which had nothing to do with the actual mission. And most people didn't know why they were seeing those numbers and why did they even exist. So when you start questioning that, you just realize that those numbers are designed to distract your monkey
Hmm.
brain so you can basically use your intuitive mind more accurately without questioning what's out there. So it's almost like trying to scramble your consciousness to be more illogical and
Hmm.
to not be more creative, but just to be more embracing other realities,
Yes.
because this is completely different from our third reality. And yet, what I've discovered is that remote viewing belongs to the third dimension. So
Hmm.
it doesn't belong to a fourth dimension or a fifth dimension. It belongs to our reality. It's just that this is the final stage of third dimensional aspect of reality in
Yes.
our consciousness, and that's all very fascinating, because when you start embracing other realities, for me, like I'm able to go beyond that third reality today by basically being able to understand other aspects of consciousness that most people don't grasp because
Right.
they don't have that experience. So, and I'm not mastering the fourth dimension, far from that, but I understand it, and I can also go there eventually. But from the visions I had and my understanding of reality, this is really interesting and exciting to me, because I know we're not far off from that fourth dimensional aspect.
No,
It's just that we're
we're
so
definitely
close.
getting closer moment by
Exactly.
moment.
Yes. And so what I can say is, now we're jumping around, but the remote viewing aspect to me, while I was being validating or validated for all of my sessions for years on end, and I got involved into missions and very exciting missions. At first it started off from random stuff and very selective moments of missions that I wasn't privy to, because I don't have an NDA or
Hmm.
a secret, I don't have any secret clearance whatsoever. So I was just basically being used to see some things that I had no idea about. It was just like random moments that felt very exciting to me, almost part of like a Bond movie, but they were just moments. So I didn't know the full size picture, and it's only because of my ability to see further and almost like attaching my consciousness to a network of events.
Mm.
So by ask or being asked to see one moment in time, I'm able to link that moment to more people and more events, which led me to save that agent's life multiple times over time, because her life was in danger. I was able to see very clear events about her that were about to happen or already happened that was going to be leading to her death eventually. So I was able to link all of these events, and that helped me with my remote viewing skills, because while some people may just see, like you said, they can see some events, they can smell, they can feel certain things, but sometimes they don't have a clear picture, or they don't
Right.
have a full picture of the event. Like very good remote viewers, for example, like McGonagall will
Hmm.
see, like for example, the arch in Minneapolis, I think, or whatever it was. He was able to see an arch, and he was able to physically describe it through remote viewing by describing the structure. He said, "Oh, maybe that's what it is," as an image through like a training session that he had. And he did that with Paul Elder, who was also part of the Stargate program. And Paul and I are very close friends. And so I know that all of these events occurred. And so those good remote viewers can see certain things like that. It doesn't mean that they necessarily have like a full movie event. I'm seeing mini movies pretty much every time, and either through the eyes of someone else or through my own eyes. But
Hmm.
that's very rare, I think, in my eyes. So I think to have that is something that you can't be taught. I think you need to be almost like psychic to start with,
Yes.
and the new Stargate program that exists does include a lot of psychic beings, and they do pre-select psychic beings to become part of this program, which the government will deny all of this. They say it doesn't even exist. They
Hmm.
shut it down in 1996, and then they never
Yes.
reopened it after that. We know that's not true, but I was part of that, so I know that that program does exist.
Right.
And so,
Right.
and I've been working with other remote viewers too that had also the same ability as mine. And each one of us were doing our own thing without knowing what we're doing with each other, because I wasn't privy to their remote viewing sessions. Everything was so compartmentalized that they could keep the mission safe.
Hmm.
So I was only privy to certain aspects of the mission, and only my remote viewing ability was allowing me to see more. But most of the stuff that I was seeing, even if I knew was true, based on the small things I was being validated on, I knew that even if those moments were true, I was not being told that this is true or this happened, because
Right.
they could not
No
tell me.
feedback.
No feedback on that point. But all I was being told is my remote viewing skills were 100% accurate.
Mm.
So for what I was doing at the time. And uh, when I basically got involved in more missions, is because I was becoming critical to a certain aspect of the mission for hiring people. So they were hiring, let's say, outside sources, or even like mercenaries, or other agents from other agencies. And so they were vetting them. And for some reason, I was being asked to remote view the mission in general and see if I could see anything that was out of place,
Mm.
or that maybe something that they couldn't see themselves through their vetting process. And they're pretty thorough, right? But I was able to confirm a lot of things on the actual individuals that were part of that mission, that were from different countries. I was able to link to their life, to their partners, uh, everything from their emotional states. I was able to link to all of that. And so when I was linking myself to one person, that person linked to someone else, and then someone else. So I was able
Hmm.
to access their network. And that's how valuable I became, is because I was able to see a much broader picture than what I was assigned to see in the first place. So again, you don't see that in regular control remote viewing, which is a target that links to one aspect of things, one object, or one situation, one location, or one person. So that's uh, the broadening aspect of the situation allowed me to know more and being involved in more stuff down the line.
Right.
But
And
again,
all
it
of
took
that is
years.
that linked information is extremely valuable
Of course,
because
of
you're not
course.
looking so narrow focused on one particular aspect or just you have the full spectrum of
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
the things that are connected.
Exactly, and then one thing led to another. Obviously, when I got involved in the Stargate mission, that was kind of a neat one because in Iraq at the time, that agent, along with some other nations, were in Iraq during the first invasion. And when they did the first and second Gulf Wars, they extracted a lot of artifacts from museums and from the whole country. They pillaged the whole country, basically. Meanwhile, under Saddam Hussein, they were trying to also protect some of these artifacts, and some of them were sent to Syria and some other countries outside of the country to be protected, which later on came back. And there are still a lot of these artifacts in other countries right now that are trying to reclaim, but the country is still very unstable. But while this was outside of my timeline, obviously this was in the past. I was able to see events that agent was involved in, and I was able, because I was so linked to that person in particular. We had this
Mhm.
huge bond. We were, so linked that I was able to see things I should not even talk about. And so I was saying, oh, you are involved in a Stargate, that I could see yourself going into an underground structure underneath like a palace or something. I didn't know it was the summer palace of Saddam Hussein at the time. I was only describing what I was seeing. I didn't know the names, but I could see a lot of nations. I could see, different flags, and I could see, various uniforms, and her moving around as a civilian.
Mm.
She was still dressed up. She still had like a helmet on and that body armor, whatever. She still had some protection, but she was still in civilian clothes, not wearing army clothes, right? And she had no weapons on her. So knowing that, I could see her moving around, and all of a sudden seeing this huge Stargate being pulled out of that underground place in pieces. So they were trying to take things out and putting into crates and being moved out of the country. And so what was interesting and what I never talked about before is this experience. While it happened, that agent decided to talk to other people that were part of the secret space program in
Mhm.
Iraq. So I didn't know this was going on at the time, by the way. So, but she was interested to discuss it with those two men that she knew that were in Iraq at the time, and she spoke to them. They went to a bar and they just like talked to each other. And when she addressed the subject of the Stargate and what I was able to see in terms of details of the Stargates and what was removed from the Stargate, they became very uncomfortable with the idea. So one of them laughed it out, and then the other guy was becoming very nervous and sweating over it because this is something that we're not allowed or supposed to be discussing, especially that those guys were agents themselves. So the SSP was a side job for them.
Mhm.
Most of these agents don't work fully for the secret space program. They work for other agencies. It could just be CIA, it could be NSA, it could be MI6, it could be very different countries, right? So those guys in particular were very shut-mouthed. They were not willing to share any information, and the guy who left it out, randomly, asked. He said, "Oh, how does this guy know?" Meaning me,
Mhm.
about this, and what did he see? And so he was very curious as well. And so the agent talked about the details about those missing pieces that were taken out from the Stargate that made it unfunctionable. So non-functionable, um, they were basically shocked by this and quite disturbed by the details of the locations of those missing pieces on the Stargate. So those guys were involved in the Stargate themselves. They knew of the Stargate. They shared down the line because I kept pushing. I kept pushing for more information because I knew I was onto something that was invaluable, and
Mhm.
that from an event that happened that no one want to talk about, because this was not something that was public, and also it was in Iraq, and it was involving real agents that were part of his program, and Saddam Hussein had no control over it. None. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was told, stay out of our business and we leave you alone. We let you manage your country the way you wish. Some of these guys were Iraqis as well, but they were above Saddam Hussein in terms of decision making. The SSP was their own entity within a country, and Saddam Hussein had no say in that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So if he tried to make a change or trying to disrupt whatever they were doing, his life would have been in danger. So he kind of left it alone, and he was already told from high places, you have to let it be, and let them do their work in that underground structure underneath your summer palace. Saddam Hussein built that summer palace knowing that that underground structure was there.
Yep.
And if he first came to southern Iraq, basically in the ancient Babylon location, because he wanted to, with his folly of grandeur, like he wanted
Mm-hmm.
to rebuild Babylon the way it used to be. And so he built his summer palace in that area so he could supervise the work that was undergoing for, rebuilding ancient structures like the ziggurat and all of these structures that he rebuilt from scratch, from ruins. And he also was aware of underground structures. He was aware of, tunnels and whatever was belonging to this ancient culture, in a Sumerian culture. That he believed that he was a part, like a reincarnation of the Sumerian gods. He believed
Mm-hmm.
that, truly believed it. That's why he was so, you felt close to this area. And which is interesting because he was presented with the opportunity of meeting with those beings coming out of the Stargate, which was then functional before the Iraqi wars. He was invited to go down to meet with those beings, which were Anunnaki beings.
Mm-hmm.
And when he met with them, because of his culture, he was offered to know more about alchemistry and all sorts of different
The
secret
functionality of the
codes,
artifacts.
functionalities. Yeah, not just the artifacts, but in general. And he got spooked by it because he believed that those belonged to something that was evil. Anything with dark magic and or the jinn, like the genie of the lamp, came from the word jinn, which
Mm-hmm.
is like the dark spirits of the Middle East. And while he was not a Muslim himself, he still believed that that was part of the culture in Iraq, and he was afraid of it. He was not willing to embrace it. So he left. He had a secret passageway that was linking the Summer Palace to the underground structure, and then he condemned it after that. So he sealed it off because he
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to go back down. So all of this was recorded. The U.S. Army had their command post in that summer palace during the Iraqi wars. That was the main post, command post. All of the missions were starting and directed from the summer palace of Iraq, like in Saddam Hussein. So that was interesting to know that they were there. And obviously, it was very important to them. It was not that strategic to do with the war itself, but it was strategic in terms of ancient artifacts and meaningful artifacts that the SSP could have used. And so all of these decisions were made according to that mission, which was an underlying mission that had nothing to do with the petrol and all the stuff, all the oil that was in Iraq at the time, or democracy, nothing to do with that. So when I got involved in that and I was able to link my consciousness to all of these events, I had a much broader picture than what those agents even knew.
Mm-hmm.
And because that Stargate got moved up outside of the country, there were a lot of um, people trying to make money off that as well. So yeah, you have the human side and you also have the government sides. But the missing pieces, which is interesting, And I know we are going beyond time, but maybe we can put
Not
this
a
as part of
problem.
a
This
second
is
show or
this is
something.
uh this is riveting because this is information in which you are validating for me that I know that some of the
Okay,
things that I have viewed and had visions on myself. So
okay,
I fully understand in such a way where I'm glad that you're bringing this out. So
good.
talking about Stargates is something that has been very near and dear to my heart.
Right.
You're talking to the Ascension Star Gate podcast series, so
Hmm.
there's all reason behind why certain things are called that way, and
That's true. And
just if you could just go in a little bit about the physicality of what the Stargate appeared to you
yeah,
and what if you could describe it just a little bit to give our viewers a better contextual understanding, and then maybe just a little bit about its functionality, because we did touch
right.
a little bit on the Anunnaki, and I want to make sure that
Yes,
people understand the correlation between the Stargate and
of
the
course.
extraterrestrial races.
Yes, of course. So the two Anunnaki brothers that showed up through the Stargate to begin with were basically tall beings. They had baritone voices, pretty scary to most human beings. Very unlike uh, human beings themselves. They looked humanoids, but they were different beings, and their energy was very, for what I remember and I can connect to, very oppressing
Mhm.
because you feel little compared to them. Their consciousness is way broader than ours. Their understanding of the universe is way broader, and their technology is way more advanced. So the Stargate that they were going through, however, was much smaller in size, which is interesting, considering that their height was pretty high. I would say up to like 8 to 9 feet tall,
Mhm.
but they were literally bending down to go across the Stargate because the Stargate was not as tall. And so while it was round, it was pretty much like in a movie with Robert Zemeckis, but it didn't look quite the same. It was in an underground location like the Derinkuyu location in Turkey, which was like carved rock, and the water. So the Stargate was almost like sitting on a very shallow base that had lots of water, and it was necessary for the Stargate to function, to work. Without the water aspect, the Stargate would not work.
Mhm.
That was basically the main uh, component of that. The Stargate was very dark. I would say black rock stones. The 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 composition of that rock or that stone was from Earth, but it was from the inner Earth, and it was extracted through magnetic resonance from the Anunnaki in parts. So they were basically extracting it from very small amounts of fibers to the point of merging it almost like um, just basically combining those elements together, fusing them together to make a Stargate. I don't
Mhm.
know, it's hard to explain, but that's basically how they formed that Stargate through mind consciousness, not through physicality. They didn't carve the Stargate, they formed it with their mind. And the Pyramid of Alaska, which is another topic I talked about on Gaia
Mhm.
TV for the first time, was that that pyramid was built with the same type of technology
Same
and
material.
the same stone as well, same material. And so the aspect of that Stargate was not extremely elaborate in terms of carvings or anything else like that. It didn't have many aspects. There was some writing on it though. I couldn't understand the language. It could have been Sumerian. I'm not quite sure exactly. I don't recall. But what I remember is when the Stargate was removed, which is so I explained that there were pieces missing from the actual Stargate, from the left hand side and also the right hand side. on different aspects of it. So if you like this on both
Mm-hmm.
sides, and at the time when the SSP was working with the Stargate, there were also people. So there's a race of Iraqis, or I would say a tribe that does exist in Iraq, in southern Iraq, that are tall beings with blue eyes. And they were born and lived in Iraq for all their lives during the Sumerian times. And those are the guardians of the Stargate. And so they knew of its existence and they were also protecting it. So they were allowing the SSP to work with the Stargate, but they also had an access to it that the SSP could not prevent them to do. And
Mm-hmm.
so those people, when the Stargate got pulled out of Iraq, stolen basically to start with, the Guardians were aware of that, and before the Americans came over to Iraq, they removed those pieces and put them out of the country. They just like hid them so the Americans could not use the Stargate.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in conjunction with the SSP as well,
Mm-hmm.
because the SSP, the Iraqi aspect of faction, was not in line with what the American soldiers were doing. And so they would just want to be left in peace. But because, again, all of these people work for other agencies, some protocols are broken and some people will like spy on each other. They would just like tell information or share information. And that has a direct impact on the SSP itself, which led to multiple assassinations from the US Army from killing and going after Iraqi scientists who were working on that project in Iraq. So out of 7 Iraqis that were there, only 2 survived.
Mm-hmm.
All of the other ones got killed because they were trying to get information from that SSP or Iraqi SSP program. Saddam Hussein knew about it as well, so he had vaults underground to talk about the same equivalence as Area 51, all the secret programs that were
Mm-hmm.
involved or happening in Iraq. He had access to all of these files, and they were going underground for many levels. And all of these got stolen as well. Got taken up by the Americans. So, and then it got shared with the British and the French and all of that too. But at the time, it was a big knowledge base that no one knew about until they invaded the country. Um, and those artifacts, like we are talking about a Sumerian artifact that was created by the Anunnaki that encompasses a vast land that goes way beyond Iraq. So
Mm-hmm.
think about other adjacent countries that also have similar technologies, like in Syria, for example, or even Iran. And all of these countries have technologies that the Americans try to get their hands on. And in some cases, when the Americans could not get hold of them, they destroyed them, they bombed
Right.
them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So there were many agents that were sent off to other countries to locate for those missing pieces. I was involved myself in trying to remote view one of the missing pieces as well in Somalia, I believe it was. I can't remember where it was. It was in Eastern Africa. And there was an invasion there. The U.S. Army went there, but they didn't say for what reason. They just went there, and then
Mm-hmm.
it was in the press at some point. But I was not really part of the actual mission itself. I was only saying, well, this is in that country, and then good luck finding it. Pretty much, I wasn't
Right.
really privy to the information then, and so my access was very limited. And I knew that something was not sitting right with me at the time because it's almost like it felt off. There was something that I was able to connect to with the Stargate that felt off. And so when I was asked to locate the Stargate before even looking for the missing pieces, I was asked to see where the Stargate was. And so why was I asked that question if they were already in possession of it?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I knew that something happened. And so when I was able to locate the Stargate, linking myself to it, again, I was given a lot of information, right, to do with
Right.
the summer palace, and then as I was getting more and more information, the link that I had with the Stargate became broader and way more accurate. So it's almost like my consciousness was linked to that physicality itself. I was able to link to that Stargate, and so when I was seeing that Stargate just doing remote viewing, I was able to see the Stargate, but there was a white Draco reptilian in that room, along with soldiers that were dressed up in black with caps. And that reptilian looked at me and saw me. And that made me panic because he saw me remote viewing a Stargate, and I thought I was safe. I thought that no one could see me. I knew that human beings could not see me, but that being saw me, and he was looking straight at me. So that's when I stopped the session. And when I went to bed at night, that's where I started having like a nosebleed, pounding headaches, and that psionic attack from that being was nonstop occurring hours after my remote viewing session. And so when I went downstairs and sat down on my sofa, and then I just realized, well, this is like ongoing. And so I was contacted my other friends were also doing remote viewing, and because they were part of the same mission. And I said, "Are you feeling okay?" You know, and they said, "No, I'm feeling really off. There's something going on that they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't control it. They had the same experience as me, but they didn't know where it came from. For me, I linked it straight away to that Draco reptilian that attacked me. And I said, okay, well, let me handle this. And so I was basically trying to meditate, and I was able to see my Kundalini energy, and it was going counterclockwise very slowly. And so I knew something was really off. And so I was trying to reverse my Kundalini energy, trying to fix myself with the tools that I've learned over time. And that was back in 2017, maybe 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so I was able to do that. I was able to slowly reverse my Kundalini energy, but it took me 4 hours. And I was still not being successful. I was still having the pounding headaches. And I felt attacked like constantly,
Right.
continuously, and it was exhausting. And so at some point I thought, enough is enough, and I was able to link my consciousness to that Draco reptilian again. I was intentionally trying to link myself to him, and I was going through this tunnel, and as I was at the end hovering over his head, I could see this you know a line, protuberance, or like almost like a crete, like on his skull, bare skull, white skull, and the bony structure that's
Mm-hmm.
on that being. And I was just like looking at it. I wasn't seeing his eyes. I wasn't seeing anything. I was just like being on top of him, and that's why I blasted him with white light energy, and I felt like my whole body was like part of this, and then the whole thing stopped. The headache stopped instantly, the nosebleed stopped, the attacks stopped, and I thought, great, I won, I did it. I felt super good about it. And so, and then my friends were telling me that the psychic attacks stopped for them as well at the same time. So it was a link. There was a link. Like the Draco reptilians can link themselves to a network, same as I can connect to a network doing remote viewing.
Mm-hmm.
They can do the same thing, but in a much broader and more harmful way.
Right.
I don't.
And
I don't
they're
do.
they're a higher dimensional being, just so
Yeah.
we can also, they live in the fourth dimension or the fourth density, and we speak of that in a frequential way. So, we here in the third dimension have our abilities to see, feel, and smell, and our intuitive abilities. Theirs are enhanced, so they can see everything of ours, and they're a little bit above. So as we continue to progress in our evolution of our consciousness, that we are increasing into that fourth dimension or fourth density.
Right.
And I'm glad that you explained that you have the abilities to control an outcome when being conflicted with a negative energy or a negative psionic attack, because that
Hmm.
is very, I mean, that's common for some people in the realms where they are speaking to interdimensional beings or higher dimensional beings.
Yeah, so when you have that kind of experience, like for me, based on my years of experience, I was able to understand how to protect myself because when you use remote viewing, you are also subjected to other beings because you become a beacon of light.
Hmm.
Um, you attract all sorts of energies, including spirits, alien entities who can see you from space because you, like I said, you become a beacon of light and you open yourself to so many other domains that most people don't have a clue. So
Hmm.
when they start doing remote viewing for fun, it's same as some teenagers using a Ouija board.
Right.
They have no idea about the repercussion it has, right?
Right.
Because they do it for fun, but it's not for fun. There are way more things that could be endangering their being if they're not well protected and not well accustomed to that. And that's exactly, if you don't mind, talking about why I feel compelled to do this center is because I want to teach a
Right.
different form of remote viewing that is not being taught right now. Because I've done binaural frequency workshops as well. I've been doing that with like Paul Elder using the Monroe Institute. So I'm very familiar with the practices, and it's so different from what I'm used to. And it's so still very enriching, very interesting to me because I'm embracing a different aspect of remote viewing or out of body experiences, which can be generated or created by binaural frequencies, which is fine. Again, I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think it's a good help. But you need to have that mindset and openness to embrace it in the first place. Because if you don't, then you may not be able to see whatever you're supposed to be seeing. And the protection around remote viewing or even out of body experiences is very limited because there are no real courses to explain how and how important this is. So I've set up a whole workshop program for 7 days to teach people how to protect themselves and how to embrace the remote viewing practices and the training. But again, starting from baby steps to get to the next level because you have to be do it in order. You can't just like jump right in and thinking that you can just like see something like a regular psychic. You have to be able to understand whatever surrounds the remote viewing aspect, and that's what I'm doing with like through qigong practices,
Hmm.
meditation, hypnotherapy sessions. All of that is going to be all part of that workshop program through the Terra Novelis, center that's going to be happening at my place in Duncan on Vancouver Island. And so the first workshop I'm going to be creating will be on October 14th of this year, 2025. And I'm only limiting to 10 people
Mm.
because I can only manage so much. And so I want to be able to have enough one-on-one with everybody and being able to, for each person to have their own hypnotherapy sessions with the practitioners that will be coming in on site during those 7 days. And able to share my knowledge and my informations with them. They can also take notes and ask as many questions as they want. And like I said, you come as a friend and you leave as family because I
Yes.
want to make sure that all of these people understand and embrace this new reality of consciousness that not only makes them fully aware of their current reality and dimension, but also aware of other dimensions, which is also part of our Earth. And this is all part of the continuity of the evolution of mankind, which will be leading us to the next dimension to see free energy and leave all the old technologies behind because this is what is slowing us down. And it's not so much the technologies or the power that's at play that is slowing us down. It's also the dogmas that are also embedded into the science that we have today because we're so backwards that and the science is only
Yes.
relying on certain dogmas that they're not embracing the reality of telepathy, for example, which again has been mentioned through the Kai Dickens telepathy tapes. seeing autistic children being able to be mind readers and to be pure 100% accurate remote viewers.
Hmm.
They can meet up on the hill and communicate with each other telepathically. They can talk to spirits. All of this has been documented through that podcast that Kai Dickens has done. And again, science will not agree with this. And this is conducted by a doctor who goes in with a journalist and does all these tests, with those children around the world. And the test is always the same result, that they are telepathic beings and they live outside of their body because they are non-verbal beings who have used a different way to communicate with one another and even to us. So that's how interesting it is. And until we can embrace this new reality, we won't be able to move forward. But again, yeah, it doesn't take many people to recreate this new reality. We need to have as many people as possible. We each do our part. You do your part. I do my part. A lot of other people in the consciousness movement are doing their part as well. And then the more we do, the better we will be able to embrace this new reality.
Yes, absolutely. And, I have such appreciation for you and your work and you stepping out onto creating a platform to help create more of that collective consciousness that
Mhm.
these things are possible
Yes.
and that they can be learned, that they are innate within us. It's about cultivating that awareness and learning the skills to do that in a way where it becomes usable and tangible information to us for
Mhm.
whatever purpose that we see, but we use it for the best and the highest and greatest good. We're not using it
Yes.
this particular type for nefarious type of projects or intentions, but for the
Mhm.
intentions of bringing better information, better technology, that exists within us because we are the technology, and that
Mhm.
it expands. So I'm
Exactly.
super excited for you and the Terra Novelis Center. That I think these are just going to be great tools for people to learn, and especially since you're limiting it to just 10 people, that really gives that intimacy that is needed to get that full understanding and feedback of, that confirmation is so important when you're learning how to remote view. Is like, am I crazy? Am I
Mhm.
just seeing things? Is this random? And then to say, yes, this is this, and this, we can validate this, and you know to have those helping moments where you can guide someone to further develop. It's just a great process, and I so support that.
Thank you. Yes, I mean it's not just a technique; it's a philosophy, and
Right.
that's what people have to embrace in order to do it and to achieve it. Because it's not just about them either; it's about everybody else. And so we have to be able to, understand those realities around us, in order to achieve remote viewing in a safe environment. Because again, same as I said before, if you try to do or trying to do a technique that without understanding uh, what it encompasses, you could get lost
Yes.
and you could harm others and you could harm yourself in the process. So, like I said, when I was just basically a novice in this and trying to embrace the reality of remote viewing, when I got attacked by that Draco reptilian, I wasn't prepared for it. I could have not protected myself beforehand. I could have, but I didn't. I only learned that as I was experiencing it. And then, to my knowledge, that attack led to another one a week later. So,
Mm.
and I wasn't prepared for that one. And I got killed in the process while I was in New York City. And I was not prepared for this, but I also realized my own mortality and my own limitations in front of those beings, which are more powerful than us as we are today. So, they have their own agenda, yes, but at the same time, they would try to tell you, I said, let us be. We do our own thing. You do your own thing. As long as we don't interfere with one another, there's no point in creating a war in this. But you are doing your own evolution, and let us do our own. Like it's almost like we are aware of each other. It doesn't mean that we agree with what we do with each other, or basically we have different goals. But if we start interfering with what they are doing, and if we start to attack them, which is what I did, I attacked that being, but that being attacked me first. And so because I was trying to protect myself, I may have had to address it in a different way instead of trying to be conflictual and trying to attack him. Instead of trying to fix myself, maybe I should have addressed it and in a different way. Maybe by trying to communicate with that being and trying to say, I'm sorry I invaded your space, and trying to, let you be. I'm sorry I went over there without your authorization, or, that kind of thing. Again, I'm not going back there, but I'm just saying this maybe could have had a different outcome if I positioned myself in a different format, and I was trying to be more protective of myself and others, because again, other people got affected by my own doing, right?
That brings up a great point. We as human beings have this circle of perspective that we think that everything revolves around the way that we see them, the way that the human consciousness sees them. And part of our awakening process is to understand when we start to come into more physical contact, more contact consciously with other extraterrestrial, interdimensional beings, that we have to accept their perspective as a different perspective from ours.
Yes, that's correct.
Because it is entirely different. Their world is entirely different from the human world that we experience here on Earth. And we also have to understand that there are versions of our Earth in different parallel universes that are different from what we see.
Exactly. Yes. And in all honesty, I believe that all of these parallel universes, or even Earth, are within our own Earth and parallel to ours. And so is this juxtaposed to each other. And so the different dimensions that we already have, and scientists have discovered that in the quantum realm, we have like 26 other dimensions on Earth, and we only know of so many. So while they can trigger certain experiments on other dimensions in the quantum field, we physically human beings cannot interfere with those dimensions because it's way beyond ours and our frequency. So of course, we're only limiting ourselves to this reality and based on the frequencies we're subjected to on a daily basis. But in order to get to the next level, we have to change not just our frequency, but our understanding of those different dimensions.
Absolutely. Sebastian, this has been such a wonderful conversation and informative. I think our listeners are just going to be amazed with some of the information that has come out today. And there's so much more that we could talk about. So I would like to extend another invitation to you that we could talk about other subject matters that have to do with remote viewings, and we can go into pyramids and other types of portions of history. But I would like to thank you again today for your time, for your knowledge, and spending some time to bring out these messages and this information to people. Where can people find you on the internet? Your website is, and all of the future things that will be coming out from you in the next months.
So I am on Facebook. People can search for my name. Again, it's not that easy to find me because I'm lots of Sébastien Martin, but if they can reach out to me through the terranovelis.com website, through the contact us page, they can reach out to me there. And then that will go directly into my email and I will be able to respond to them. And so that's TERRA and then NOVELIS.com, terranovelis.com. And people can book workshops from there. There are multiple workshops heading towards December, starting October 14th with the first one. And I'm offering other types of workshops, including experiences workshops as well. So people who've been abducted and wish to have more in-depth knowledge about their own abductions through hypnotherapy and group discussions, I will have a 7-day workshop for that as well, which is already on the website.
That's awesome. And I will make sure that we put this into this video content as well. You'll be able to find all of Sebastian's information in the write-up. If you take a look down below, you'll see all of that information and also his website address. Again, for all our viewers, thank you for being with us. You make this possible. We are so grateful to do this for you and to bring out this to elevate our consciousness and awaken our awareness. Thank you for watching the Ascension Star Gate Podcast series. We'll see you on the next episode.